Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this video, we're going to be reviewing Avengers Infinity War. So it's been 10 years in the making. This is the culmination of all of those superhero movies. It started all the way back with the very good, very first Iron Man movie. This is a very exciting thing for people who don't have some reason to hate Marvel movies because they like other movies for no apparent reason. So this is a good thing. This is exciting. I'm very pumped. I purposely avoided as many spoilers and as many trailers and anything as I possibly could. I wanted to have the most full experience ever for this movie, hoping that it would deliver. Does it deliver? That's the question. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start off spoiler-free. We're going to go for the generic main part of the review, completely spoiler-free, super generic, vague, but enough to give you some information. And then by the end of the video, I'm going to say, okay, plug your ears, go away. We're going to talk about all the spoilers. Here's the interesting thing about that, though. Even with the spoilers, there's not a ton. And I'll explain that in the spoilery part, why I say that, but prior to then, I can't say anything more about that. Okay, so let's dive into the spoiler-free part of the review. The main gist of this movie, and this is no spoiler, we've known this for a while now, since Avengers 1, the first Avengers movie, Thanos is looking for the Infinity Stones so that he can do Thanos-y type stuff. The good guys want to stop him. That's the whole plot of this movie, okay? There's not a lot of depth, and I think that's fine. It's all the depth you need for this type of movie. We've had 10 years of depth, kind of, at least for the individual characters. We don't need any more character building. There's little bits here and there, of course, to drive the story, but there's not a lot of depth, and I think that's fine. I don't know if I haven't watched any reviews or anything, so I don't know if anybody else is complaining about this, but it is definitely a very surface level movie. There are little things that drive Thanos and that kind of thing, but it's generally that, okay? So it's super basic. We're not going to talk about anything in particular beyond that's what he wants, the good guys have to stop it. Because of this basic plot, because we don't have to spend a whole lot of time developing various things, even though we haven't seen much of Thanos, we still get his goals and everything like that. We get enough of that in this movie, and it's actually probably more focused on Thanos than any of the other characters, and I think that's a good thing. It allows all of the other characters to have most of the other characters to have plenty of screen time. We'll get to that in a second. But it gives Thanos enough screen time also, so we get to see him develop enough just to drive his villainous. And then, that's a word. And then we get enough of the other characters. So it's a lot of characters in this movie. And I think for the most part, it's pretty well balanced. You see some here, you see some there, and they're all doing their own thing. But it doesn't feel like you're not getting enough. Overall, there are a couple, and we'll probably talk about that in the spoilery part, there are a couple characters which get totally sidelined. I think that's terrible. But overall, it's really well balanced. It feels a lot like the first Avengers movie, in that you get all of these characters, they're all doing their thing. I think it's even better handled than Age of Ultron, because that wasn't handled very well, in my opinion, and I think many others kind of feel the same way. But you get plenty of each character, such that they feel complete within the film. Okay, it's pretty good, it's well balanced. One of the things that helps this balance is that the characters still feel like themselves. I mean, we have a bunch of different writers across the different films, directors, producers. It's all a bunch of different directions, so to speak. Not the literal sense, but the figurative sense. Lots of different directions. But they all still manage to keep the characters kind of self-contained. They all feel like themselves. Iron Man is still Iron Man. Spider-Man, Hulk, Star-Lord, any of them. They all feel like themselves. Okay, it's all very well handled in that regard. It's good. I will point out that just me personally, this is what I think. I'm curious what you guys think about this. The Guardians, I know they're a lower tier set of characters than most of the rest of them, but they seem to do well enough on their own in the movies, and it's fine when they're kind of more self-contained. In this movie, they feel like a second tier set of characters, particularly Star-Lord, who's the main Guardians character. He just doesn't seem to have the superhero status, which he really doesn't, to be up against the likes of Thor or Iron Man. And to me, that was very apparent and almost borderline on annoying in some cases. It kind of felt shoehorned. There's no way around that really at this point, so it's not really a fault of the movie. It's just something that's like an inevitability. You can't really get around it. I thought it was noticeable. I'm curious what you guys thought about that. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the spoiler section also. So we mentioned Thanos already and how it's a very important thing in this movie that he has his motives, okay? It's really a movie focused on Thanos, and he is by far by far the best villain. His motives are not completely unlike Hela in Thor Ragnarok. She kind of just wanted to kill lots of people, and that's generally speaking Thanos' thing. He's a bad guy, and he's super bad about it. But he actually, he's so much more into it. Hela's idea was just, it felt like a generic bad guy, but somehow the way Josh Brolin, maybe it's Josh Brolin, maybe it's the writers, I don't know, the way they bring Thanos to life in this movie, he's such a better villain. He's easily the best villain in the Marvel Universe. Is he as good as the DC villains? Yes. By far, because they've been terrible so far too. So by far, best comic book villain to date. He's so good. And any issues I thought there may be with him were not. Like the purple, they did a good job with the purple. He didn't look like Grimace, even though they even mentioned that in the movie at one point. I only bring that up because I said that in my review for the figure. Speaking of, those of you that said the figure looks exactly like the movie based on the trailers, no, because I went back and checked the trailers after watching the movie. He looked like a badass all the way through. The figure looks terrible. Gonna leave that there. So yeah, Thanos is awesome. With armor, without armor, he's a badass. So beautifully portrayed. Absolutely loved everything about Thanos. Except for one thing, which was a plot thing, and we'll get to that in the spoilers. The pacing for this movie was generally really good. There was a good smattering of action. It's mostly action, honestly, but there is, like I said, a lot of the little bits of development for Thanos and then little bits of development for other characters because we kind of have to bring everybody together after the events of the previous movies. But it's done really well. Like, there's no particularly boring sections. There's no really drawn out fight sections. I think it's mostly done really well. There is one issue with the balance of the action, though, and you'll see this as you watch the movie. I can't get into it too much, but at one point there are two different things happening, okay? So there's one group of people over here, one group of people somewhere else. And the stuff that's going on here, significantly better. Way more hero shots, way more style, way more heart, way more everything. Whereas everything that's going on over here felt like filler action. It was way more Age of Ultron going on over here as opposed to the more iconic particular scenes for individual characters or groups of characters felt a lot more like the first Avengers movie. So that was a bit of an issue only because it made this batch less interesting, significantly less interesting. It was just a bunch of filler fodder type action, which is kind of a bummer. We can talk about that a little bit more in the spoiler section, but overall it was still fine, but this side was so much better than this side. It was an issue, let's put it that way. Surprisingly enough, this movie had a lot of CGI in it, and it was fantastic. It was really, really, really good, particularly Thanos. He looked great. It was like the hairs on the arms, the wrinkles in the face, the way he talked, the way he moved, everything looked so good. It was impressive, highly, highly impressive, really good. Most of the CGI followed that suit. Like, there was a lot of CGI for characters in particular. It looked great. A couple scenes, there were some like close-ups, like bust-up shots where it was green screen in the background, obviously, and those kind of stood out. Just a handful of them, nothing crazy and nothing like super long or anything, so it didn't really detract from the movie, but you'll probably notice them. I think there was one with Iron Man in particular, or Tony Stark, and it looked fairly green screeny, but it wasn't a big deal. But everything else was just beautiful. It was glorious CGI work, so super impressive. You guys won't have any problems with that at all. It was really good. The next thing I want to talk about is the writing, because the writing has been a bit of an issue for the Marvel movies, especially lately. You know, you've got a lot of the Marvel detractors who say they're just too funny, they're too comical, which I think is kind of funny. It should be much more dark and much more grounded and serious. I haven't really felt that throughout the most of these movies, the majority of them. Obviously, you guys saw my review for Thor Ragnarok, and I thought that was horribly, shall we say, heavy-handed. It wasn't well done. It wasn't well executed. The humor totally destroyed the tone of the movie, and it just didn't feel right at all. This movie is nowhere near like that. It definitely is closer to the first Avengers, which had just a smattering of humor here and there to keep it from being a super grim and super dark movie, and I think that's good. I will say, for me personally, it was still a bit much, particularly in regard to the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's not like they have to be telling jokes constantly. Most of them were fine, but every once in a while there was one or two that just kind of hurt the mood a little bit, hurt the tone, but mostly the movie is tonally even. Like, you have the right tone, or balance, I guess I should say, the right tone for what's going on. Short of one thing, which I'll talk about in the spoiler section. The jokes weren't bad. Most of them were actually fun. Like, I appreciated the jokes in this one as opposed to the ones in Thor. I didn't really. A lot of them were pretty funny, but they did not necessarily fit. It wasn't a problem, but it wasn't necessarily a good thing for the film. So there is that to consider. So the last thing I want to talk about now before we get to the spoiler section is the ending. I know that sounds weird in the non-spoiler section. I'm not going to go into any detail at all, but this is a problem for the movie. Very vaguely, very generally speaking, the ending is... I want to make sure I don't spoil anything here. The ending is kind of empty, kind of hollow feeling. You're supposed to feel one way. They want you to feel one way, but because of how they handle it, you can't feel that. Or at least I couldn't. And I think objectively, it would be hard for most people to feel that if they're thinking about what they're watching. So to me, that's a problem. It definitely doesn't kill the movie. And we know... I think this is fair to say. This isn't really a spoiler. We know that there's another Avengers movie coming, right? There's Avengers 4 coming. We don't know the title, but we know it directly relates to this. So we know that that's happening, and the way they do this transition, like, there's almost no real, like, punch at the end of this movie. There's like, well, we need to watch the next one now. You know what I mean? It's not like two standalone films. It's basically one film kind of separated. It's a little weird. I can't go into it more. We'll talk about it in the spoiler section, but that's it. So... It's an issue, but it's not necessarily a problem, especially if they handle it well for number 4. Okay, so that's it for the main part of the review, guys. Thanks a bunch for watching. If you're going to leave right now, I do appreciate it. I do have videos up every single day, short of when I'm sick or something like that. So that's 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every single day. And then we do stream Tuesday through Thursday at 7 p.m. If you guys want to check that out, we do some sculpting, some video games, some other kinds of fun stuff like that. So come back for that. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Come back and watch the spoiler section after you go watch the movie. Now we're going to get into the spoilers. You have been warned. Okay, guys, it's time to talk about the spoilers, and this is going to be more of a discussion type thing rather than me just giving a general feeling about the movie. These are going to be a little bit more like, why did that happen? I didn't really like that. I did like that, but more specific and way more targeted at particular events of the movie. Okay, and you have to have seen the movie, otherwise this will kind of ruin your experience. The only reason I say that these spoilers aren't super spoilery is by the end of the movie, we know that at least most of it isn't going to stay. It's not going to stick. So it's almost like Rogue One in that none of it really matters. Right? It was a lot of stuff going on. It was pretty well handled, a lot of fun to watch, but none of it's going to stick story-wise. So it leaves you feeling like I don't really care. None of it matters. We'll get into that a little bit more specifically as we go. So the first thing I want to talk about is the very opening of the movie. I think this was perfect, as opposed to Thor Ragnarok, which felt super forced and not made well tonally. This is so good. This sets the mood for the whole thing when Thanos kills Loki. That was so good. It was so good because not only does he kill Loki, and as far as we know at this point, Loki's actually dead. And even Thor mentions it at one point. He's probably going to stay dead this time. He kills somebody. We don't see that. We've seen it like once, twice, maybe, where the character actually stayed dead. And this was good because it's also a main character. Is it a bummer that it's Loki? Yes, but I personally feel like he's outlived his usefulness anyway. Great character. Great portrayal by Tom Hiddleston. Very well done. But how many times can they fit Loki into a story? I don't think anymore. I mean, practically speaking. So I think that was a good choice. It also gives Thor motivation. And it's the new villain killing one of the old villains, even though he's been a good guy at some points too. He's still a villain. It just really shows Thanos' direction and how we're supposed to feel about him. He is just all powerful and such a badass. And we also get to see Thanos go toe-to-toe with Hulk. Very briefly, but that was awesome. Hulk fighting Thanos, Loki even referencing the first Avengers movie. Just so well done. Such a cool scene. Very, very awesome. Which leads me to my next thing. Hulk's not in the movie ever again. What a wasted opportunity. What a total bummer. They shoehorned him into Thor Ragnarok. I mean, he fit in it, but he was clearly just a gimmick there to get people to want to watch a Thor movie, because Thor movies have been traditionally not as well received. So Hulk was in that, but he's barely in the Avengers Infinity War movie? No, it was all Mark Ruffalo talking to himself, trying to get Hulk to come out, and he never does. And I think the biggest reason for that is merchandising. Let's put a new Hulkbuster suit in there. Why? Well, why would we have Hulkbuster? Iron Man's not going to fight Hulk again. No, he's not. That's right. So what can we do? Let's just take Hulk out of the movie, put Mark Ruffalo in a Hulkbuster suit. What? Why? How did he even get it? Did I miss something? Where'd that suit come from? Where did it come from? I don't get that at all. It makes no sense to me. Maybe I missed it, but I don't think so. And it just, we don't need to see more robots fighting things. We already have Pacific Rim. We already have Transformers. We already have 10 other movies that are about robots fighting things. We didn't need a new Hulkbuster, which was barely even utilized. Hulk. Should have been Hulk. Total misstep on their part. They should have had Hulk. No excuse for it. No good excuse for it. Okay, so I already mentioned this in the other part about Star-Lord not really being able to hold his own against the other superheroes. Maybe that's just a personal thing. I'm curious what you guys think about that. But I think it really stands out in the scene where they're trying to take the gauntlet off of Thanos' hand, and he ruins it. Like, he ruins it. He's not even stopping Thanos from killing somebody. He's mad that he killed somebody, so he's going to ruin the plan and kill half the universe. That's just, it felt so much like just cheap writing. Like, we needed there to be a reason for this, and I didn't like that. And maybe it bothered me even more that it was Star-Lord, but maybe they had to have it be Star-Lord because he's least liked out of the main heroes. Like, it couldn't have been Spider-Man or Iron Man, so it had to be him. But it irritated me a lot because I already don't feel like Star-Lord even belongs there. And then he ruins the plan, so that just bugged me. And you could make the argument that this was all planned in the first place by Doctor Strange, which it was, as far as we can tell, because especially right before the part where he dies at the end, he says it had to be this way. Not meaning, I had to go, I had to sacrifice. No, he meant this was all part of my plan. I saw the million billion things, and this is the one that works, so it's going to be fine. We'll get back to that, but it just bothered me the way Star-Lord, it felt to me like the Guardians are still being shoehorned in to be significant when they really shouldn't be as significant. That's my feelings. Let me know what you guys think. I'm sure there's a lot of people that love the Guardians. They don't work for me, and I didn't feel like they worked that well in this movie. Gamora did, because her plot part made sense. The rest of them were basically just there to be there. Especially now that Star-Lord has no juice. Not really anyway, so don't get it, don't like it. And Drax clearly isn't going to be pulling off what he does in the comics. It didn't look like it to me because he didn't get to do anything really. So Guardians felt very forced to me. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is, let's do two particular deaths. Okay, so here's the interesting thing about this movie. Lots of people end up dying. Some of them feel like they're real death, and some of them feel like they're totally worthless. All of the ones at the end feel totally worthless to me. Loki's death, very impactful. Gets the tone going. We already talked about that. Feels like it might stick. Gamora's death, again, very impactful. But here's the thing that I don't like about it. It wasn't impactful for Gamora. I don't think we care about her enough. We've only seen her in 2 movies. She's not a particularly relatable character. She's a group of a bunch of other people. She doesn't ever really get her own thing. She's probably the best character from the Guardians in this movie, but she really only serves to promote Star-Lord or the other Guardians or whatever. She doesn't have, at least for me, and I don't know anybody that feels differently personally, and I know that's anecdotal, but still, I don't have any connection to her, so her dying didn't matter to me. But it did matter in the sense that it mattered to Thanos. It shows us so much more about his character. He's not just this crazy guy that wants to kill everybody. He really does believe what he's doing is the right thing. He's doing what he thinks he needs to do for for everything. He's on a noble path as far as he's concerned. Are there sacrifices? Is there a great cost? Yes, but is it worth doing? And to him, we see in this scene, absolutely. It was such a good scene for him. For her, I was like, well, there's another one down. Do I care? Not so much. I care big picture, small picture, not so much. So, I don't know. I feel like it's a weird thing. I don't think it was a bad thing. It's just weird that the character death itself didn't really matter to me. And I'm wondering if it did to anybody else. But I thought it was great for Thanos. So we'll just leave it at that. The other deaths we'll talk about when we wrap it up and talk about the ending a little bit more. I don't think it really matters that Heimdall died. Yeah, that was, he killed him, obviously, but we already saw half the Asgardians get killed before. A bunch of them just got killed right now, and they didn't really matter anyway. They were really, really just supporting characters, and it did kind of give us a hint of where things were going, but nothing really mattered, seriously, until a big character like Loki died. So Loki's death completely made Heimdall's irrelevant. Does that make sense? Hope it makes sense. Now, the other thing, this is the big one. All of those things were just little superhero movie gripes. You can live with them, live without them, whatever. This one does bother me. Very early on, Thanos has some gems already, some of the Infinity Stones. So, Infinity Gems, Infinity Stone. Why does it sound weird now? Are they one or the other? Or they're both? Either way, he's got some of them in his gauntlet already, okay? He's got power and he's got reality very early on, all right? He's got other ones too throughout the movie, but those two are like the most important ones in terms of him fighting people constantly. He shows us when he deals with Drax and Mantis that he can just do the thing like, okay, you turn into some cubes, you turn into some spaghetti. I can just do whatever I want because I've got the reality stone, and he blows up all kinds of stuff because he's got the power stone. Great game, by the way. Why did he keep punching people? And the answer is because there would be no movie, so maybe make him get those stones later. Figure out a way plot-wise for him to not have those stones at his use, in his arsenal. He should have just been, you're done. You're done. Not literally snapping because they needed that for the end, but okay, do your fist clench thing. All right, Iron Man, Spider-Man, you're all noodles on the floor. I'm leaving. Why does he keep fighting people? And he does that throughout the entire movie until he snaps. Like 4 of the stones or 5 of the stones would have been enough for him to never have to fight anybody. I know that would have been boring, but that's my point. They could have handled it such that he doesn't have those particularly useful in combat stones until the end. That would have been a much better thing, because every time he was in a fight, I was thinking, man, he's a badass and that's awesome. But also, why is he fighting? He didn't have to. He's turning Star-Lord's gun into a bubble shooter. He's making things disappear. He's making all of reality bend around his will, except for when he's fighting people. Then he's just fighting people. So that was just irritating. They could have made it so that he didn't have to fight people, or that he didn't have the stones to do it. You know what I mean? It just could have been handled a little bit better so that there was no question, like, he has to actually fight until he gets the stones. And then maybe he actually does turn somebody into a puddle or whatever. Like, that would have been really good. Instead, we just see him do a lot of actual fighting. Granted, the scene where he goes like this and basically throws meteors at people, one of the best scenes in all superhero movie history. I think that was just awesome. But he didn't have to do that. It's not like he knew he was being filmed. It looked awesome, but realistically, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just go like this and make everybody disappear? You know what I mean? So that's an issue. I get why they didn't do that. It would have been almost impossible for them to figure out a storyline where he couldn't do that reasonably, so they just made him not do it unreasonably. So that, it is what it is. Okay, so now let's talk about the ending. I know this is getting long, but there's a lot to talk about in this movie. I will argue that the ending is not good at all. Him snapping and making half of everybody go away, I get the goal. I get that he's doing it. I don't get any impact from it at all because of how they handled it. Okay? Hear me out. It started off with Bucky. We see Bucky dying, and I'm thinking, well, that's weird. We thought we were going to see more of Bucky, but maybe not. Maybe they're going to kill Bucky off, and that's that. He's not a main character, so that's fine. People are actually dying again, and it's going to be important. And then more people die, and more people die, and more people die, and it's a bunch of them, including Spider-Man. We know they're not going to kill off Spider-Man. No way. Absolutely not going to kill off Spider-Man. Black Panther, same thing. He just had a really successful movie, only one movie. They're not going to kill him off. And then like half the other people, like, yeah, now we realize it's not going to happen. It's not going to stick. Doctor Strange isn't going to stay dead, most likely. These are all hunchy type things. But then we also have ones like the Guardians. They're all gone now. They have a sequel already coming out. So now, excluding Gamora's death, because it was separate. Same thing for Loki. It's separate. It could stick. All of the ones where they dissolve and turn into ash or whatever, highly unlikely that some of them are going to stick and some aren't. It won't make sense. They can't reverse half of his action, you know what I mean? Unless it's really bad writing. So all of the deaths at the end, even if you don't know the comic book storyline, you know that they're not going to stick. So it takes all of the impetus out of it. There's no value to it. Therefore, the ending is totally empty. You can't feel sad because you know they're not going to die. Like, they're not going to stay dead. And it's not exciting because they did die in the movie, but so, like, the good guys lost, but at the same time, you know none of it's going to keep. So it doesn't matter. Like, there was just no emotional impact for me anyway, and I'm guessing for most people by the end of the movie. It was kind of like, well, now what? You know? This movie doesn't really have an ending because it's just like obviously it has its own ending, but you know that ending isn't a real ending. So it doesn't count. You just feel left like, well, now what? So I don't like the ending in that regard at all. I think it would have been better if that happened sooner in the movie, and then maybe something happened after that. I don't know. Or at least they could have been more selective with who died. That way we are left wondering, are they actually dead? Are they going to come back? What? Not now we know they're not going to actually be dead. So now we wait a year, everybody that died comes back, and then we have another set of deaths probably. So I don't care for the ending. Let me know what you guys think about that. But for me, it was totally empty and devoid of all emotion or any impact. So I don't care for the ending. But all in all, I really did enjoy the movie. I liked a lot of it. I mean, obviously, if you guys saw the first half of the review, you know how I feel about it. But these things, these spoilery things, not the best. Not the best. I think it could have definitely been better. I do think a lot of the spoilery things are good things, like the fight with Spider-Man and Iron Man and everybody basically when they're fighting Thanos. That's the best action scene we've seen in a very long time. So that's what I was saying when I said one scene was really good and the other scene was a bunch of filler. The Thanos fight was fantastic and really, really good. The Wakanda fight was pretty boring and not good because you have Hulk not being Hulk, and then you have a bunch of regular people, including Cap. I mean, he's still just a strong, regular person. Everybody's just fighting generic, faceless, not even humanoid bad guys in most cases. So that whole fight to me was just a bummer. But the Thanos fight I thought was really fantastic and really great, and that is the one I think that sells the movie. After you've seen it, of course, that's definitely the keynote for the movie, I think. So yeah, lots of awesome stuff, but definitely some things could have been handled better to make the movie even that much better. That's my take on it. Let me know what you guys think. Let's talk about it in the comment section below. If you're going to post spoilers, post the word spoilers, and then leave space before you start typing so that people don't get spoiled. You don't want to ruin anybody's experience, even though once they see it, they're going to see, none of it really matters. Don't spoil people. We can talk about it. I'd like to talk about it in the comment section, but don't spoil it for people. Okay, guys? All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. You guys already heard that spiel, so I don't have to say the whole thing again, but I do have lots of content here. So if you like this kind of thing, I have more of this coming. I have lots of action figure reviews. Like I said, we do the other things, so there's plenty of stuff here. So please do, if you like the video, it really does help me. Give the video a thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe so you can come back for more stuff. In the meantime, keep collecting.